Hey everybody, Danielle Egnew here, commenting on something I normally wouldn't, a TV show. Why? Because that TV show, Game of Thrones, has set a new precedent in audience participation and emotional ownership all across the United States. Now, why is that? Is it because we really love watching people running around with swords in 15 and 1400s clothes when they look really sexy? Well, yeah, kind of. That's kind of a thing. Yes, I am devastated it's over too. Yet I can't help but find myself watching all of this commentary online and reading all of these different perspectives about how the Game of Thrones ending failed us all. And I'm here to offer a different perspective. I'm here to talk about why the ending of the Game of Thrones was absolutely perfect for our time frames. Let me put my sword down so we can talk. Look, I know there's a lot of people out there who are super disappointed that the ladies didn't win. Hey, I'm a lady. I was rooting for actually originally good old Daenerys until she went batcrap crazy, and then I was kind of hoping Cersei might weigh in and have a change of heart. However, what I realized by watching the end of the Game of Thrones is that the author of the Game of Thrones is a huge visionary. And I'll tell you exactly why we're having a hard time with the end of the Game of Thrones right now. Let's back it up to the season where good old Daenerys got on her dragon. She's heading across the water. She's got those boats a-coming. And at the same time, we've got Cersei Lannister, who blew up the establishment, who is subjugated and made to walk naked through the street. And she is taking her place as the ruler of King's Landing. We have two very strong women, poof, coming at each other in order to rule the Seven Kingdoms. Now, at the same time frame that this is going on in a pretend environment on the show, we in the United States are ebbing into the Me Too movement. Women all over the place are denouncing the crappy way they've been treated and stepping up into positions of power that they weren't allowed to have, okay? So we as an old world, walking along the plot line of the Game of Thrones in their old world modality, we're rooting according to gender, right? So we ladies were going, go Daenerys, or maybe go Cersei, you're totally evil, but you kind of had a crappy life, so maybe you can pull your way out of it. And what I'm watching is people online devastatingly disappointed that neither Cersei nor Daenerys came out on top. And I'm watching people actually get into the old world way of viewing this iconic match-off of these two women. Now, what am I talking about? A lot of people are out there saying, the writers, they gave it to the men in the end. They threw the women away. We had nothing at the very end because they were chicks. They were written to lose it and get too emotional, and that's just a display that women can't be leaders. I disagree with all of that, okay? Let's really think about this, gang. Let's look at the Game of Thrones not through an old world lens of boy versus girl or archetype versus underdog. Let's take a few steps back. Why did Daenerys Targaryen go bat crap crazy? Because she was inbred for 1,000 generations. Hello? Okay, we watched her brother go bat crap crazy and get very emotional. As a matter of fact, he got a bunch of gold poured on his head, and old Daenerys stayed cool as a cucumber. We probably should have gotten a cue that she was a little cray-cray back then. But we couldn't stand the brother. We couldn't stand that all these women were being treated so poorly. So when he got all that gold poured on his head, we cheered, yay, yay, dead Targaryen, you're crazy, yay. And we just hoped that Daenerys wouldn't fall into the pit. So Daenerys, at the very end, did not go crazy because she was a woman. Game of Thrones gave us plenty of precedent that Targaryens just go crazy in general. The whole Mad King thing, the whole series starts because, the Targaryen king is killed because he's crazy, because he's inbred, okay? So Daenerys didn't lose because she was a woman. Her genetics betrayed her, and her avarice ate her. Her old world avarice, when she finally had control of King's Landing. What did Daenerys cave into? Her own old world avarice, even though she was trying to be this new world leader who freed all the slaves. When it got to the end of the day, old Daenerys went bink and fried the city. Not because she was an emotional female, but because the show had gave us plenty of precedent that she was a cray-cray, inbred Targaryen. Okay? So let's move on to Cersei Lannister. Folks are saying, oh my God, Cersei got written to completely go all emotional and crazy at the very end. Now, I will put this to you this way. Cersei's giant clink in her entire psyche was hubris. And where did she learn the hubris? From her father. So we had these two women stepping up to try to bring us into a new world, and they both fell into old world behaviors, avarice and hubris. That's why they lost, gang. That was the demonstration this author, I believe, was trying to make with this show, was it doesn't matter what chromosomally you're packing. It doesn't matter whether you're male or female. If you enact rotten old world behaviors, you're gonna get rotten old world results. So here comes old Daenerys and here comes old Cersei, and boom, and pretty soon Cersei's under rubble with her incestuous husband brother, Jaime. And then we have old cray-cray Daenerys who fries the whole city. And at this point, her Targaryen's really coming out and she wants to go kill everybody. And it's not because they were emotional women. And for those of us who are fans of the show, if we're watching this, making it a gender match-off, we're kind of losing the point of the majesty of why we love Game of Thrones so much and why so many of us are so sad about it ending, because it outlaid possibility. So then I see all of these blogs online, okay, where people are saying, I can't believe they elevated a man at the very end to rule the 7 kingdoms. And I can't believe a guy, Tyrion Lannister, is the hand of the king, and it just went back to the men. Did you watch the show? Because Bran the Broken had lost all of his boy parts activity, and he had gone north of the wall. And he had lost his identity as a male or a female. He talks about that in the show. He talks about how the idea of partnership or marriage is no longer in his sphere because he transcends gender and becomes the three-eyed raven, okay? Am I the only one, as an angelic channel, as a psychic, as a medium, am I the only one rooting for the guy who's an oracle to actually become king? Come on! He wasn't even in his own mind. He was barely human, let alone a guy. So if we really look at the template of Game of Thrones, what we were shown is that old world behaviors, whether they are enacted by men or women, tribalism, avarice, hubris, boy versus girl, archetype versus underdog, what we saw was that was the old world. And they elevated to rule the 7 kingdoms the non-binary person. They elevated the non-binary person, gang. Oh, why is this going lost on the world? They elevated the non-binary person who barely even identified as human to be the steward of all of those kingdoms. And Sansa Stark, I see this all over the place. People are mad as heck that Sansa didn't step up to rule all the kingdoms because she is the girl who is left. Again, gang, we're looking at Game of Thrones through a very old world lens. We're looking at Game of Thrones through the lens of the wheel that hasn't yet been broken. You know, that was crazy Daenerys' whole thing. We need to break the wheel. Well, we can break the wheel without breaking each other. We can break the wheel without burning down a capital. We can break the wheel without ruining everything. And what we are doing right now through mourning the end of Game of Thrones is I don't think very many of us actually saw the transcendent nature spiritually of the show. We got too pulled into our old world political viewpoints. We wanted the boys to win or the girls to win, instead of seeing that the non-binary person whose sole existence to hold space for all was elevated to leadership. That is exactly where we're at in our time frame right now. We're in the feminine time frame. We're in 100,000 years of the feminine. Now, that doesn't mean that women are preferred. It means that the stewardship of all is the way to go forward if we're going to save the planet and each other. I talk about this all the time. So as I watch Game of Thrones wrap up and Bran the Broken, the non-binary person who has a viewpoint outside of side, he doesn't believe in a side. Bran even called himself an it at one point. It doesn't believe in a side. It looks at the whole picture evenly. As Bran went forward to become the leader, who did he appoint? Tyrion Lannister. Tyrion identifies as a male. However, Tyrion Lannister was emasculated the minute he was born. Poor Tyrion is moving forward, and he's trying to make himself into a man just like Jaime, just like his dad. He's whoring like a mad thing. Because Tyrion had this incredible balance of masculine and feminine. He never stood a chance in that world to be seen as a man. So the two characters that did not represent gender really in any way were elevated to rule. Am I the only one noticing this in Game of Thrones? Now look, I was a little sad that they exiled old Aegon Targaryen, aka Jon Snow the bastard, who we found out was not a bastard, up into the wilderness. Yet keep in mind, gang, Jon Snow embodies the old world archetype of the Christ figure, okay? So of course he's not gonna rule. If they would have put him on the throne, that would have been the old world, and the whole point of the series of Game of Thrones was to show us what was possible in a new way. That's the whole point of the series. All right, so we've got a non-binary person ruling. We have somebody who is this very non-traditional masculine figure who is emasculated and cast away because of his physical appearance as the Hand of the King. And Jon Snow, who is a big, handsome Christ figure, goes north of the wall. It really kind of sucked. I would growl too. What we see with Jon Snow going north of the wall is that was Jon's destiny. He was an archetype of the Christ figure who sacrifices himself for the betterment of the whole. The gorgeous, I mean, he even looked like Jesus. Come on, with the beard and the mustache and the kind of pensive look and the pouty mouth. I don't know if Jesus had a pouty mouth, but he probably should have. So what we see here is that Jon goes north of the wall because he was the last of the old world. If he would have stayed, he would have been elevated to the throne. He couldn't be elevated to the throne because we just created a new world which wasn't honoring the old lineage. Jon Snow was the happiest he ever really was being part of the free folk north of the wall before he started sleeping with his aunt, which just got creepy because he was a Targaryen. Let's not forget. So if we're disappointed with the end of the Game of Thrones, I think it's because in our old wheel world, we're just not there yet. We don't know what it looks like yet to go into that place of understanding, transcending our sides to see a better world. Let's not forget that the non-binary person and the very non-traditional discarded version of male there put together a council of people that were just kind of the normal folk. So what we saw was a budding democracy or budding republic with a new way of going about how we elevate leadership. I don't think we get it quite yet. I think we're too busy still fighting. Is a boy or girl going to win the presidency? Is the archetype or the underdog going to come out on top? We're still looking at this from the old wheel, gang, all right? So just ponder this. What possibility does the end of the Game of Thrones have for us? Well, a pretty big one when you consider this. That dragon that was leveling everything, that Daenerys rode around, at the very end, when he saw his mama run through with the sword, and he looked at Jon and thought, I could hold you responsible. What did the mystical representation of Game of Thrones hold responsible for the death of his mom? Or her mom? Was a dragon a boy or a girl? I don't know. I mean, there were no dragon parts, but is that a dragon thing? I don't even know. The dragon turned its fury on the Iron Throne and melted it to nothing because the dragon recognized that the Iron Throne, is what unlocked the cray-cray in the old Targaryen in Daenerys, and it was the Iron Throne that killed her. Not Jon, not a boy, not somebody from the north, but it was the avarice that killed her. The old world killed Daenerys. The old world came out of Daenerys. And that, in my opinion, is the greatest lesson that this series has the potential to teach us, is that if we continue to embody old world behaviors, I don't care what gender you are, it only brings old world destruction. So I'm super sad to see Game of Thrones go. Yet I love that Bran the Broken rose to rule, and I love the lesson that it taught us, that no matter who you are, if you're too tribalistic or too team-oriented, man, you're going to burn the Capitol down. And these actually are just my clothes. Okay, gang, I'm glad we had this chat. I'm gonna go more in the loss of my beloved Game of Thrones with the rest of you. And let's just remember that if we're going to break the wheel, we can do it without tribally burning down the Capitol. Take care.